Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and we are on day 21 of our 22-day journey with the major arcana. I feel like my Boston accent just slipped back out a little bit. It's strange that happens sometimes. Anyway, it is 9:30 on Sunday night. And I've been thinking about doing this podcast all day. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have to get it in. I can't miss a day when I'm right here at the end. So I'm very thankful to be here with you tonight. And I hope that you all had a beautiful weekend. And I hope that you are learning a lot about you in this journey. One thing that has been coming up that I really wanted to share with you today is that I've been asked since doing this journey if I plan to teach a tarot class. And no, I have no plans of teaching a tarot class. And in fact, this 22-day journey hasn't been about teaching you anything. I mean, really, this journey has been and my hopes and my intention has been to inspire your own thought and to have you ask yourself questions to help you start just your own process of consideration of whatever this journey of life is for you. And what you have experienced, and realizing that you have all that you need to gain more understanding and more insight about your personal journey. Actually, everything I share with you on this podcast is really not to teach you. All of it is truly just to inspire your own thought and to hopefully encourage you to start to trust your own guidance and your own inner wisdom. And while, we all have teachers, teachers have teachers, but students have students. And so in that, we're all sharing and exchanging, but ultimately it comes down to our own processes and us really examining our own choices and our own perceptions, and again, just strengthening our own connection with ourselves. So that has been my intention with this journey, and hopefully it has inspired some thought and question for yourself. Now, another thing I have been asked several times by email since doing this journey is, questions about, do I blend tarot with Reiki? Why tarot? All of these different things, which is very understandable because, of course, this is called Reiki Radio. But the truth is that my personal, I guess you'll call spiritual practice, has always been from the beginning a blend of different spiritual tools, because I have from the very beginning, and not even just in this realm of spirituality, I've always been a very curious person. I like to learn and understand different perspectives about everything. But what has been useful to me on this path is kind of building my own spiritual toolbox in a way. And I don't blend modalities necessarily, but I have studied various things individually. So, I have, when I'm meditating, I'm meditating. If I'm practicing Reiki, I'm doing Reiki. If I'm reading, I'm reading. But what the beauty of continuing to study and continuing to learn other philosophies, other techniques, other points of view, is that you start to see where they all meet, and how all of these different tools, all of these different teachings are really about pointing us back into ourselves. And all of these tools are meant to help us to awaken to who and what we are, just coming from different angles, different lenses, different cultures even. And so they all can even give you a better understanding of the whole picture. So for example, I meditate, and I took meditation classes separate from Reiki training, but my meditation practice actually strengthened my practice of Reiki, because Reiki in of itself is very meditative. And I took intuition classes, which also supported my Reiki training, because as you work on yourself energetically, you start to perceive what is non-physical in a more prominent way. So, my intuitive training helped to give me a broader lens, an ability to translate energy and what was unseen, just the way we're able to translate and perceive things with our physical sensory. And so it gave me a wider scope of not just energy work, but also being a physical and non-physical being. Well, I also think tarot has supported my practice and my understanding and my personal transformation in the same way, because it supports us understanding what may arise through our energy work. So, for example, when you do Reiki, you do energy work, even in meditation, you have things start to surface as your energy moves. You start to have those different aspects of what you may have held in the subconscious mind start to come forward into your conscious awareness for your acknowledgement, for your transformation, for your understanding. And then we have something like tarot, like this journey that we've been taking that really helps us to understand this process that we are going through. So, they all kind of support each other, even though they can stay in their own lane, so to speak. All of these different practices really just help to deepen my understanding of me. So that's why I'm sharing this with you. So, Reiki in of itself, just for those of you who are very into that practice. Again, Reiki in of itself is very meditative. The Reiki precepts are very closely linked to the Eightfold Path. Some people practice chanting in their Reiki practice. There's also the aspect of laying hands, which is just like another part of that system. And overall, the practice of Reiki really helps us to renew the mind. Again, we have the subconscious start to come forward to our conscious mind, just like what we learned in tarot. So anyway, I will actually talk about this more in the Seeker Circle. So we are going to do a Facebook Live this week about this entire journey. So if you would like to join, just go to my website, yuchi.com. That's YEWCHI.com. And I will see you in the Seeker Circle. Now, one last thing to that is I'll say practicing more than one modality or learning different things, it just all comes down to personal choice. And some people choose to stick with one technique and that's all, and that's it. But it really is about your personal choice, and there is no right or wrong way on this path, which I hope has been very clear in this 22-day journey that we've been doing. Okay, so let's get to today's card. Today we are looking at the Judgment card, and this card is it's interesting. Okay, so first of all, it's about like rebirth or awakening. It's the energy of our spiritual realization. We had that Sun card yesterday, and we were celebrating you and all that you have learned. And this is, almost like an extension of that. It's like, I'm thinking to tell you this. There was a time when in energy work I kept hearing resurrection of light, and I didn't understand what it meant initially. But it was kind of like how we come into these new stages or cycles of new awareness. It's almost like going through this cycle of rebirth, just like we had the death card, the death in the transformation sense. It's not about a physical death. It's about a transformation in our consciousness, letting go, allowing ourselves to release what may no longer be serving us. And when we say let go in this realm, a lot of times it's just, speaking to our process of surrender, sometimes literally letting go in terms of walking away from something or making different decisions, making different choices. But it can also be as simple as a change in our perspective or awareness. And once we go through that death cycle, we come into the space of rebirth. Now, the associated planet and element with this card is water and Pluto, which we also saw in the death card. And so in the death card, the combination of water and Pluto speak to the energy of Scorpio. And we talked about that being like the phoenix rising. So at the death card, that Pluto energy is like where it all burns down. The phoenix rising only happens after like total destruction, it all burning down, falling away. And then the phoenix rises more resilient, stronger, with more awareness and wisdom. And here in the Judgment card is like where we are rising after that destruction. So one of the beautiful things to ask yourself today is really, what have you nurtured through this process? What have you nurtured? What have you transformed? Because at this point, at the Judgment card, this is the outcome after a particular life cycle or after a particular experience, after a particular frame of process. So we've gone through this journey together, and in these last 21 days, what has come up in your awareness? And again, what have you allowed yourself to consider, to transform, to heal, to nurture? There is so much beauty in these cycles that we go through, depending on how we see them, view them, and understand them. And the number of this card is the number 20. And if we reduce that down, we get the number 2, which points us back to the High Priestess. And remember again, she was, there was a veil behind her, and this understanding that we were part of one that all that exists and have the ability to consciously be aware of this universal mind and the subconscious mind and our intuitive nature. But we had to go through a process of transformation for ourselves. We had to do the work ourselves in order to become aware or to realize our ability and who and what we are. So again, here we are at this Judgment card, which is about our spiritual realization. And as you can see, there are these people lifting up in the sea. It's like that water, that body of water that has appeared in several of the cards, that universal consciousness. Now, what's interesting is it is like a symbol of people resurrecting. They are waking up. They are being signaled by this angel and this trumpet that the angel is playing. Now, if we look even more at this, there are 6 people in the card. I'm looking at the Rider-Waite deck in case you're going through this journey with me. Your card may be different if you're using a different deck. But in this deck, there are 6 people. So at the very front, you see a man, a woman, and a child. And on the other side, you see another man, woman, and child. And when I see that depicted twice, it reminds me of as above, so below. Both sets of people a symbol of that energy of the Trinity, or the energy of, remember, the man being a symbol of the conscious mind, the woman being the subconscious mind, and the child being the personality. But we have 3 on each side, again, as above, so below. And they are depicted in the color gray, which we talked about can be a symbol of wisdom, but also that blend of light and dark, the yin and yang. It's a symbol that at this space you have overcome another layer of your inner duality. I mean, literally in this card, they probably overcame it entirely, but we are going through a process. So we have done some work in balancing ourselves even more, overcoming that inner duality. And just like we've seen in other cards, they are naked. And so again, that speaks to not having any facade, returning to our innocence. There's no costume. You are visible to you. You have shown yourself. You have revealed yourself to you. There is nothing to hide. You've already gone through the process of, your shadow, whatever you have tried to store away in the subconscious mind. Those things began to surface, giving you an opportunity to transform. And if you look at your own journey, of course, so much transformation has occurred. You have become aware of your various fears. You've become aware of some self-imposed limitations. But here at this card, we're asked to consider, how are you judging, or how are you evaluating your experience? Have you learned from your challenges? At this point, are you allowing yourself to be honest and allowing yourself to see you for understanding? Are you in your authenticity? Are you working on it? Are you in your integrity? Are you using your voice? Are you being true to you? And again, at the very least, are you working on it? It's a process, right? We don't just snap our fingers and overnight we're like, boom, we've got it all figured out. It's a process. And sometimes it feels like we take 2 steps forward and then we take a step back. But the point is that we continue to put forth the effort. Now this water, just like with the high priestess, remember we talked about it also being related to memory. This is a symbol of remembrance of who and what you are. In this journey, so many people, especially when we start this work, we talk about so many synchronicities we start to recognize. And it all seems really strange. And I have to tell you, today was one of those days for me. I spoke to you all, I don't remember when it was. It could have been the end of last year or the beginning of this year. There was a podcast a while ago, around the time when I first started the Seeker Circle, where I shared with you I had a strange experience with angels, and having a message come through from a particular angel, and just there was a strange sequence of events that happened, and I shared that story in the Seeker Circle. So you can watch the video, go in the archives in the Seeker Circle and listen to what happened. But that experience, one of the main things was I got this message that the angels were saying that we can ask them why they are here supporting us, instead of us always just asking for them to do something for us. Like, oh, can you help me find a parking space? Or like, can you help me, find my keys, or with a job, or whatever it is you may ask for support for. They were saying how there is more benefit in us asking why we are able to communicate with them in the first place, and why they are actually here in support of us, and building a relationship with them. So back then when I shared that in the Seeker Circle, I also mentioned that they asked that I continue to find out more information around that. And admittedly, I didn't. I had it on my list of things to do. Can you imagine? Like, oh yeah, I'll get around to that. But anyway, life is funny. And on this path, the sequence of events just kind of, it's amazing what happens. So I'm doing this journey with you, this 22 days, and I'm paying attention to how it's interesting how every day, whatever card comes up, there seems to be something in life that points to that particular thing. So I thought this was going to be a short story. Today, of course, I knew the Judgment card was coming up, and coincidentally, I had plans to watch this webinar, and I really didn't know what the topic, I knew what the topic was, but I wasn't sure what they were going to talk about. So anyway, and listening to this, the person hosting the webinar pretty much said exactly the messages that I was getting from the angels months ago about seeing how they are here to support us on our journeys. And then, of course, I look at the calendar and it's the 22nd, and I talked to you yesterday about the significance of that number. So all of these things, and there was more to it, but it all pointed to the energy of today and like really having a clear awareness of this particular cycle that I am going into. And it made me think about, too, how, in this Judgment card, they are in the space of awakening. And it made me think of even, when we think about resurrection, even though this is about resurrecting to a new level of awareness, it also made me think about reincarnation and how in this life and these journeys that we're taking, all of this work that we're doing is like, it carries over with us. You know what I mean? So it's like the more healing and transformation that we do now, the more that we allow ourselves to heal whatever comes up for us in that wheel of fortune, the more that we allow ourselves to acknowledge what we hold and move into forgiveness and, become more consciously aware of the choices, but just putting in the effort to remember, to wake up, to live more consciously, knowing that that will carry over. That is just, it's promising. Let's say that. So anyway, another thing with the Judgment card that I wanted to share with you, it made me think of, is the Egyptian story of judgment of the soul. So there was this, story with the ancient Egyptians about the heart being weighed when someone died, not in the material realm, but they believed, like in the spirit realm, that when someone died, their heart was weighed against the feather of Mayat, which was also the feather of truth. So just like the scales that we saw in the Justice card, imagine if your heart was on one side and your heart was being weighed against a feather. A feather. Now you know how light a feather is. So in that, think about how you're living and what would it take to keep your heart light? What would it take for your heart to be as light as a feather? It makes me think about, again, what we hold and how we hold it. Think about when you are, judging yourself, if you're being hard on yourself, if you're trapped in fear, if you're bound by your limitations, how restrictive and heavy that feels. How heavy it feels on you, even physically. And then on the other hand, think of the times where you experience joy or this overwhelming rush of love or gratitude, how light and expansive that feels. So as it applies to this Judgment card today and thinking about all that we've gone through in this 22-day journey, what we've learned, how can we start to, ground into this new awareness that we have? How can you ground into your new awareness by living and being the expression of it? Your choices, your efforts to establish more loving thoughts, loving words, loving action. Again, that energy of forgiveness. Stepping out of, hiding from ourselves or regret and all of these things, but doing the work, using the tools that we have to truly transform the mind. It reminds me of, when I speak of us in this new awareness, it reminds me of, it was Oprah, I think she says, like, when you know better, you do better. So, think of it in that way, like, no matter what you've done in the past, no matter what you've done before, you have an opportunity to acknowledge it, see it from a higher perspective, forgive, transform, heal. And you have choice and new awareness to do differently now and moving forward. And it's such an interesting thing, when we really do start to acknowledge ourselves. And then we do have all of these tools available to us to support us, right? Because we have Reiki, like we talk about all the time. We talk about meditation, even the power of journaling. And now, like we've done through this process, the support and the teachings and the wisdom that we gain through the tarot, all showing us our ability, possibility, what it's like. You are awakening. And when we say that, when we say we're awakening, it has nothing to do, it's beyond the physical act of sleeping. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's you're consciously aware of being part of this universal oneness. You're becoming consciously aware of the responsibility and the impact, the influence of your mind, your choices, what you hold. How are you directing and making use of your mind? How are you making use of what you feel? In all of this, we have talked so much about balance. And this balance of, acknowledging our feminine, our masculine, our light, our dark. And it all comes down to this balance of being spiritual while functioning in the material realm. There is no aspect of you that isn't spiritual. We tend to separate the two, like the physical or material or like real life stuff. We sometimes put it in a different box than our spirituality, when every part of your life is part of your spiritual expression, part of your spiritual experience. All of it. And this is all about us learning not only how to harmonize within, but how to live in harmony. So we have this angel in the card, again, that's blowing this trumpet. And it's really, think of it as like the trumpet or this alert going off about, awakening you to your higher calling, your higher awareness. We talked about the questions we ask. Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? This trumpet, these people are standing, awakening, again, having their spiritual realization. What are you realizing? What are you recognizing in this journey? What if this is like a symbol to rise to the calling of your heart? Through all that you have gone through all that you have, transformed. Again, we could look at all that we've learned throughout this journey, throughout these 22 cards. How are you going to decide to live? Now, you've moved into this new stage of awareness. You're aware of your tools, you're aware of what you hold, you're aware of how to transform. How will you decide to live, to balance, to maintain it all moving forward? Again, how are you judging or evaluating your experience, and how do you make the most of it? So, that is it for the Judgment card. You know, this really is like a culmination of all that you have learned along this journey, but also what you have done, the choices you've made, the willingness to surrender, to transform, to, just participate in your life experience, in your journey. It's always about you. And tomorrow is the final day. So tomorrow we move on to the World card. Again, I can't wait to hear about your experiences. You can join us in the Seeker Circle. Go to my website, yewchi.com. That's YEWCHI.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get access to the Seeker Circle as well as some other free gifts. So, I think that is all that I wanted to say about this card today. Yeah, that's about it. I hope that you have a beautiful night, everyone. And remember to always journey in love.